Hello and welcome. My name is Biagio Mazza, Pastoral Associate at St. Sabina Parish in Belton, Missouri, and I'm here to welcome you to another Do You Know series question. Today's Do You Know question is, do you know the difference between Protestants and Catholic exposure to Scripture? It's important to know that the Catholics and Protestants both share the same scriptures, exactly the same, with the exception of 7 books in the Old Testament. Protestants call these books apocryphal. Catholics refer to them as deuterocanonical or second canon. There's a nice little anagram that one can be used to remember the 7 books, and it's called J.T. McWeb. And each letter represents one of the books, and they are Judith, Tobit, 1st and 2nd Maccabees, Wisdom, Ecclesiasticus, or known as Sirach, and Baruch. There are also some longer additions to the books of Daniel and Esther that Catholics accept and Protestants don't. But with the exception of these 7 books and these longer additions, the rest of the Bible is exactly the same, even with regards to the order and sequence of the books and so on. Since the Protestant Reformation, Protestants have really focused very strongly on Scripture, both in deeper study and understanding of it, whereas Catholics responded with a kind of reserved approach to Scripture for fear of misinterpreting or not interpreting it correctly. And as a result, we've grown up with 2 different relationships to Scripture. For Catholics, much of this changed drastically with the Second Vatican Council that was ended in 1965 with the approval of the Constitution on Divine Revelation known as Dei Verbum, its Latin title. As a result of this, we've come to greater understanding of Scripture and greater study of it. But today we still are exposed to Scripture differently, and the Sunday services are a good indication of how this happens. During Sunday services, most Protestants who go to church bring a Bible with them, primarily to follow along with the passage that the minister has selected for his sermon, and secondly, for Scripture study during Sunday school. This has been a long tradition in the Protestant denominations and continues to this very day. From a Catholic perspective, Catholics do not go to Mass on Sunday with a Bible, nor is their Bible present during Sunday services in Catholic churches. Rather, Catholics are exposed to Scripture primarily through a book known as the lectionary. Now, the lectionary is a book that contains selections from Scripture taken out of their original context and placed in unique relationship with one another, always attuned to either a feast, a liturgical season, or a particular theme for a Sunday. And so as a result of that, Catholics are exposed to Scripture not directly from the Bible, but from the lectionary. And the Second Vatican Council established a 3-year lectionary in which there were 4 readings chosen for any particular Sunday, 2 from the Old Testament and 2 from the New. And these readings were now taken out of their original context and placed in a unique relationship with one another for that particular Sunday or feast day. As a matter of fact, a number of mainline Protestant denominations like the Lutherans, the Episcopalians, the Methodists, and so on, found the lectionary a very useful tool, appropriated it for themselves, and modified it for their own use. And today it's still in use, called the Revised Common Lectionary. Neither exposure to Scripture is better than the other. Rather, each has its own pluses and minuses. So if you look at the Protestant exposure to Scripture, the advantage, the plus to that exposure is the fact that the learner is actually looking at the Scripture passage in its original context, knows exactly what happened before, what comes after, and is able to enter into a more deeper understanding of what that passage is in its original context. The pluses from a Catholic tradition is that we are exposed to many more passages from Scripture. However, the issue with that is that because they're taken out of their original context, we don't have the fullness of that original context to help us into a deeper understanding of that particular passage. However, from a Catholic tradition, the Scripture do enter into a dialogue with the liturgical seasons, the feast, or a particular theme on a Sunday, and so on. And so that's helpful in promoting the dialogue between Scripture and the liturgical cycles. That doesn't exist in most Protestant traditions, and as a result, that really ends up being a minus for them. And so as a result, what we would like to actually do is to learn from one another. If we could only learn from one another and enter into the pluses of each one of our exposure to Scripture, it might minimize the minuses. And by minimizing the minuses, what I mean is that we as Catholics would be more attuned to the fullness of the context of the passage we're reading, and we would enter into a deeper understanding of it, whereas Protestants could learn from Catholics to be more attuned to liturgical seasons, to feasts, and to particular themes on particular Sundays, and therefore enrich their understanding of the liturgical season as it relates to Scripture. So both have pluses and minuses, and both could really be enhanced by learning from the other. So I hope this has helped to understand just a bit more of how the difference between Protestants and Catholic exposure to Scripture, and I hope we will return again to more Do You Know series questions to enhance our understanding of faith and our traditions. Thank you.